week. Welcome to another episode of It's 11. It's Heaven for Jamie Vardy, the Leicester City podcast by Leicester City fans for Leicester City fans. Joined tonight by the OGs. We have some serious stuff to discuss. Steve, Barry, Tom, and Aidan. How are you, Steve? To start with, how's things?
Yeah, I'm okay considering Saturday. I'm getting on, and I've got next weekend in the Chelsea end, following the Foxes, which probably doesn't augur well. I'm going to have a lot of happy Chelsea fans around me.
Happier Chelsea fans than they were yesterday, anyway.
Yeah, you can only hope they play as badly next week, but I doubt it somehow.
Yeah, well, Baz, you're mourning another Aston Villa defeat. It's good to have you with us in our pity party this evening.
Yeah, I don't like it when we play at the same time, because I can kind of either look forward to your game and hope that they win and just put a bit of sparkle into my life, but it was just depressing watching the scores come in for both games. Yeah, shite.
And Aidan, bad weekend for you as well. Crusaders not done too well.
Didn't know they were away to kind of title rivals Glentoran on Friday night at the Oval. Scored after 5 minutes, but Glentoran replied within 2 minutes, and it was kind of downhill after the 20-minute mark, so not good.
Aidan, there's a man behind you.
And Dave's all right. He's going to be very quiet. He's come to watch Man United Liverpool, but he's promised not to speak. Haven't you, Dave? All good, all good.
And Tom, have you recovered from Saturday's shenanigans down at King Power?
I have not, in more ways than one. No, bad weekend really, wasn't it? So the highlight was beating you at darts, which was quite tremendous and unusual.
Unforeseen, that
wow.
was.
Yeah, good work.
Yeah, all right, cheers for that.
How to get it
the
in
episode
there.
of It's 11 at 7 for Jamie Vardy. Now, listen, lads, one place to start, and that's obviously the defeat to Southampton at the weekend, and the questions that have been brought into mind regarding the manager's position from around the fan base. So depending which social media you're on, if it's Facebook, it's a little bit more subdued, but if you're on Twitter at the minute, there's a huge swell of support against the manager to remove him from his position. Tom, how are you feeling after the game on Saturday? What's your thoughts now that the dust settled?
To be perfectly honest with you, I've tried not to think about it. At the time, it was horrific. Annoyingly, not that unexpected, especially, it had that feeling like when we played Brentford and they were coming back into it. You had that feeling that Southampton were coming back into the game, and you could just see the goals coming like a couple of minutes before. We were even calling it, a goal's in now, and yeah, it's just really disappointing. I think that we've got the squad that we have, and I don't know. I mean, it felt like they just didn't give it any effort out there. So, yeah, as I say, I really haven't been thinking about it since. I haven't wanted to. I know we caught it again on Match of the Day, and other than that,
we'd had a few beers by that point.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, but in terms of kind of Rodgers, I think I get quite easily swept up in the media of this is all going wrong, blah, blah, blah. And I think, some of the chats that we've had recently has kind of brought me back around to reality and thinking, stick with it, see how things go. Especially, last week we were speaking to Tom, weren't we, about, he was saying give him 10 games and see how you get on. But I don't know, I just don't feel like we've got the time for it this season.
It's starting to look a little bit bleak, Steve. We've played 3 games, 1 point, 18th in a fledgling league at the moment, which, people will say don't pay too much attention to. But the next 3 games, I think, are Chelsea, Manchester United, and then Brighton after that, before playing Spurs and Aston Villa. So it's not, most of those games aren't easy. I'm waiting for us to buy it. But we could be in a situation where we're getting slightly cut adrift. I think the priorities have changed a little bit this season already.
Yeah, I think it's too early to say. I mean, we were talking earlier, would you fire Moyes right now? He's bottom of the table without a point, without a goal. They only finished 1 place above us last season, I think. So but it's been going on for a while, I think, going back to last season, where we've shown glimpses of our form, like the first 60 minutes against Brentford, we could have easily been 4 up. And then we got nervous and let it slip. Arsenal, we defended appallingly, didn't really, although we scored a couple of goals, didn't really play that well. And although we were in control for the first 60 minutes, we didn't create much, did we? And that's the worrying thing. I think we had 2 shots on target all game.
I think the stats, Steve. I think the stat is we've only had 8 shots on target this season, scored 5 goals.
Well, that's, you know, you can't continue to score that many goals with that few shots on target, can you? That's an extraordinary percentage. So it's really worrying. We don't seem to be able to defend. I would give Rodgers a few more games to turn it round. And for the simple reason, he's got a few credits in the bank, you know, 2 5th-place finishes, 8 last year with horrendous injuries, FA Cup, Community Shield. And I just wonder who would come right now that's any good.
Seems to be the argument, doesn't it? That seems to be
yeah, and it can't go on as an argument forever. If we keep playing like this, we've got to make a change, right? Yeah. But I don't want Sam Allardyce or Sean Dyche turning up or whatever. And who's going to come with no money to spend? And are they going to be able to make it better? And is that going to fit into the team, into the club's long-term plan to disrupt the top 6? I don't think so with managers like that. So I think we've got to be a little more patient. That's my view. But yeah, we could be in for a difficult season. All I'd say is Arsenal lost the first 3 games last year. Look what happened to them and where they are this year.
I think it's not just the defeats though, Steve, is it? It's the way we're playing at the moment that adds to that. So it feels pretty bleak, Barry. We called it on last week's show that if Leicester were to go behind, then it would turn fairly toxic, and it did on Saturday. You know, there was people. Well, they got booed off. The lads got booed off at the end. People were making their voices heard, not least myself and Tom. But you know, the flip side to what Steve's just said there. If in your work you weren't any good at it, but your employer sat back and said, "Oh, who else can we get in to do a better job?" That just wouldn't happen, would it, in any other industry?
Yeah, I think so, and I think I kind of get what Steve says about the credit in the bank, but that's gone now. I think nothing seems to be changing.
He's dropped out there, unfortunately. We'll come to you, Aidan, instead, if that's okay. You're from afar. You haven't obviously been to a game this season and sat through what we've sat through, but you're a bit more on the forgiving side of Brendan Rodgers at the moment.
I think a major thing for me is, and Danny Murphy brought it up on Match of the Day. You know, until the transfer window closes, I think we're going to be very unsettled. I think what's going on with Fofana and to an extent with Tielemans is really unsettling the side. And I think it's premature to judge Brendan Rodgers at this time. I think that's having quite an effect on the team. Now, it's not just that, of course, but I would like to see how he can get things settled, perhaps by the end of September. I just think this is, and it is a big question that many people asked, why do we have a transfer window that remains open? You know, a number of games into the season, especially for clubs like ours. That wasn't good, seeing Fofana sitting in the stand on Saturday. That's taking the players' minds off what should be happening, as well as the fans. So I think give Rodgers that opportunity to settle the squad once he knows who's going to be there for the season. And kind of, I think it's too early to say at this point. I think we need to let that transfer window shut and see how the dust settles.
Baz, good to have you back. You put the pound in the meter there.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Where were we?
Yeah, I think it's strange because it's very similar to where I'm sitting as a Villa fan, and the next 3 games are awful for both our teams. And one of the things, like Tom said, I get totally swept up in the social media thing when it's Villa. But one of the things I was discussing with, and I'm assuming the Leicester fan base was on Twitter too, was we can give them the next 3 games. They're technically free hits because they are seen as better teams. But for me, I think the trigger needs to be pulled now and allow the team to see, the new manager to see what his team's like in these circumstances. because Brendan's not going to learn anything new. He's got nothing new to give. He hasn't gained anything new. Like the motivation's not there. Like if he's not going to go, he needs to change the coaching staff. So something fundamentally has to change. Players isn't enough. It's too stagnant. There's players that are just chugging along 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, and just happy to do it. There's no eagerness. Like Ndidi is a prime example of that. And it must be disheartening. I like the belief of giving people time and whatnot, but if you don't do it soon and you don't start to remedy it soon within the first 10 games, you'll be so far behind. You're not going to get it. You're going to be fighting for top 10 and probably not get that. And then it affects your next season. It affects that players won't want to come to that. They won't want to come to a team that looks like they're on the decline, and potentially still with a manager that looks like he's got nothing to give.
No, I would agree with you there as well. I think, Tom, when we look at form, we're not just talking about the last 3 games, are we? So, we take it back over the back half of last season. That's 3 wins in 14 games. And those 3 wins were dead rubbers, 2 against relegated teams and 1 against Southampton, who were extremely poor. So this malaise has been going on for a while now. And just on the back of that as well, Harry's talking about the players sort of not getting out of first gear, but the manager, when he talks, doesn't sound like he's getting out of first gear either, does he?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think the football just hasn't been exciting for the whole of 2022, which has been frustrating, going to the King Power and, like you say, scraping a few points here and there. We've never felt like we've got a real good team back together. I know we had all the injuries and such, but even when those players came back, they've just not been at it, really. And yeah, Rodgers, I think it's really starting to grate on everyone that he's making the same excuses sort of week after week. And there doesn't appear to be any passion behind what he's saying either. He just doesn't seem interested.
Would you, Steve, because I know you wouldn't, but could you see an argument where people might think that Rodgers has maybe given up a little bit and waiting to be sacked? Because he's not going to walk away, is he, from the payoff that he's going to get? He's talking £25 million if we sack him.
Yeah, what worries me about Rodgers in general is he doesn't seem to take responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault. He's always playing the victim, right? And last year we had all the injuries, and you could kind of sympathise with that. We did have a terrible year with injuries, but there were things that were within his control that he still messed up last season. Otherwise, we could have had European football, right? And we could have won the Europa Conference or even the Europa Cup itself, Europa League itself, because he messed things up, right? And he's always got an excuse. And this season, the excuse seems to be, we've got no money. I wanted to refresh the club. I was speaking to players all through the summer and now I've been told we haven't got any money. And now the big clubs are circling and unsettling my star players because they've heard we've got no money. What can I do? Right? Well, what he can do is fucking motivate the players, organise them, and get the best out of them. And he's not doing that. It's like he's given up already. Man U have got 1-0 up, by the way. Yeah, so so that's really annoying me at the moment. This victim mentality he's got, blaming everyone else and not taking responsibility for what he does have control over.
I think his comments on Saturday after the game made him where the fans were booing at the end because they haven't got any new players to see. That I can guarantee that isn't why we were booing.
That was not the case.
It was another abject performance that was devoid of confidence, exciting football, energy, passion, all the rest of that. And you're a fellow Northern Irishman. Is it a Northern Irish trait? Is it that you just can't accept that?
All right, that sounds borderline racism, Mark. Thanks. I did pick up just from just watching the match highlights and looking at our numbers, our stats, that yes, we did boss possession, but apart from that, we were outplayed 9 shots to 6. Shots on target 3-1 by Southampton, corners 5-2, and on the expected goals, our expected goals was 0.26. So that shows how, you know, how little we were putting the Southampton goal in danger. So it did, you know, you guys were there. It didn't sound like we were threatening. It didn't sound like we were getting the fans off their seats much at all. So I do appreciate that the product that we're producing right now is poor. I'd be interested to hear from you guys how you felt people like Perez, Daka and Iheanacho looked, especially Patson Daka. You know, he's been around for a while. Does he look the
was
real
largely,
deal?
you could tell me if I'm wrong, Tom, but he was largely ineffective, really. But he replaced Vardy, who was also largely ineffective. And that's the third game in a row where Vardy really has done the precious sum of nothing. Yes, he's had no service, but you know, if you've watched Jamie Vardy for long enough, that it's not just about the service that he gets, it's about what he makes happen and his influence around the pitch. And he's just not there at the moment. I know he's got his new contract, and I'm hoping it's nothing too sort of major and he comes back into it. But Tom, I don't know about you, but for me, he was, you know, largely a passenger again.
He was, yeah. There's always that argument to make of, you know, are the balls getting into him, but he didn't really make any difference whatsoever. And same goes with the other strikers that came on. I mean, I barely recall Iheanacho having a touch.
Yeah.
Daka.
What happened was, you know, it's just my view, but as soon as we scored, we got totally scared. Now, we scored out of nowhere and didn't look like we were going to score.
Yeah.
Got a bit of quality from a James Maddison free kick, which was, you know, typical of Maddison, really. He didn't have a great game, but he's got that quality, isn't he, that it's a bit different to everyone else. But as soon as we scored, I don't think we really set foot in their half again. I might be wrong, but
no, you're spot on.
To quote Perez, there's a woman that sat about 3 seats down from you, Tom, who I remember halfway through the second half shouting,
"Yeah,
get Perez off his fucking shit." And that is the commentary that I could probably say is quite accurate on Jose Perez's performance on Saturday.
Yeah,
why bring Yuri on as well, though, right? He's been poor for a while. Why not bring Perez on with a bit of energy and box to box? Pratt, sorry. Yeah,
good point. Barry, do you think there's a possibility that Leicester being Leicester, they can go to Chelsea on Saturday and go and get something from that game and start to turn things round off their own back, probably after losing to Stockport tomorrow night?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can see Yuri starting again and having a stormer in that game. I think Chelsea looked pitiful and were absolutely outplayed. I just don't know. Like I don't know what happened in that game. It's hard to predict. Like Chelsea are hard to predict. Leicester do unfortunately look a bit fearful. Yeah, just don't look like they're enjoying playing football. Like the game could be a horror show, like a 0-0 horror show, quite easily. I hope they do. I hope they get a result out of it. But this is the hardest one to predict so far this season.
Yeah, I'm sure when we come on to that later, you know, we might have a varying degrees of what we think might happen there. So I put on our Twitter earlier that we're having a show tonight. 2 of the lads are still, Brendan in, 2 are out, and just asked for some thoughts on that. Someone's just messaged in saying, love to know why there's still faith in Brendan. There's no inspiration in the players, and ultimately that comes from the manager and the coaching staff. Steve or Aidan, what's your thoughts on that?
I'll take this one.
Yeah, you take
it. Don't get me wrong. It's not that I'm looking on and thinking that I'm thinking very different things from you guys. And you know, the job that he's doing at the minute isn't good enough. I think I would like to see, for me, it's that transfer window factor, and I would like to see how things settle once the transfer window closes. Once we know whether, you know, what panel of players we've got, and I guess a bit then the question that follows if you sack someone who comes in their place, you know, he has done good in the past. We know his record in the past. Is Sean Dyche, his Allardyce, are they an improvement? Do we trust them to bring the club forward? I don't know. Marcelo Bielsa, he's out of contract at the moment, isn't he? I don't think he's got a job after Leeds. and you could see some very entertaining football at the King Power if we brought him in.
Well, we can't defend anyway, can we?
Well, no, may as well.
From that side.
Make a Marte captain. But yeah, so that's my main thing is, give him a few more games. Certainly if it continues like this, then he has to go, but give him a few more games and see how things settle whenever the transfer window shuts.
At which point's enough for you then, Steve?
I would say 10 games maximum, if not before. I'm very despondent right now. I'd give him a little bit more time. But if things don't improve in the next few games, we've got to consider alternatives. Although I struggle to think who we could get. Even if it's a temporary role of just motivating the team and getting them out of trouble, I think that's what we've got to do.
There was big rumours coming around last night that Brendan had actually been sacked, and I think that's a bit of hearsay that hasn't gone anywhere as yet. And there's also some slight hearsay come out this afternoon that the club might be up for sale. Tom, have you seen that? And if so, what's your first reaction to
that? Slightly shocked by that. No, I hadn't heard that at all. I did hear the rumours about Brendan going, but but no, I don't think there's any grain of truth to there's been anywhere near that. Well, I don't know. I mean, there's talk online now, isn't there? Of is the owner the problem? I mean, I wouldn't really like to go down that route of conversation, but
in terms of what would you proportion at top? The lack of spending, the decisions around Brendan himself?
I think it's absolutely the lack of spending that people online are getting at.
Yeah, they're retards though, aren't they, Tom? I mean, we've got to comply with financial fair play, whether we like it or not. Unless you've got to have a look at Congerton, Rudkin. We signed some Duff players recently. We paid too much money for the players that we've got that aren't getting in the team, so we can't get rid of them. You've even got Vestergaard. We agree a transfer fee, and he doesn't want to go for half the salary that he's on now. Quelle surprise, eh? So I think there are things wrong. I wouldn't, and maybe there's a bit of naivety at Top's level, but I think he's trying to manage the club in a prudent way. So I think it's ridiculous to start having a go at him for all that him and his family have done for the club, to be honest.
It's bizarre though, isn't it, that you look at the spending table for the season, and the other 19 clubs have at least spent £25 million on players. How can we be that far behind though, Steve, that we're the only side that can't afford to be bringing players in? Have we been mismanaged to such a point at those signings that has hamstrung us so much, or are other clubs bringing players in to then sell later and potentially not registering them in the side?
Well, I think we've overpaid players for sure. When you've got bang average players earning 60, 70, 80,000 a year, I think that's way out of order, and it makes it difficult to offload them. We've done some panic buys. I don't know why we bought. Well, I understand why we panic bought Vestergaard, but why we chose him, it seems completely wrong in so many ways. Bertrand, Perez has done nothing. I can understand why we bought him, but not paid the amount of money we did. So we've made some bad signings. We've paid them too much. We haven't been able to offload them, and surely they knew what was changing in financial fair play. I think, is it next season to get into Europe, then 80% of your revenue is the maximum amount you can spend on wages, and we're already over 100, I think. And then it goes down, or is it 90 next season? It goes down to 80 the season after. Surely the board are aware of all of that, and their planning should have taken that into account. So maybe there's been some oversight there, because
we're not going to have to worry about that, though, are we, for Europe?
No, we're not. But I mean, there's similar plans for the Premier League as well. So
yeah. Okay, we spoke around the lack of names potentially. Some names that have been mentioned, you can tell me if this is absolutely outrageous, but Mauricio Pochettino was one that has been spoken about. And then you think of the wage that would potentially be willing to pay, because that financial fair play situation that we spoke about there is only the playing squad, so it doesn't affect the wages of the coach. So you'd imagine that if Rodgers on 10 million, was not there, we potentially might be able to put someone else on 10 million. Barry, that could change the mind of quite a lot of coaches, couldn't it, in terms of seeing Leicester as a good place to be?
Yeah, I think so. It's got to a stage now where, like, Pochettino isn't going to come to a team like Leicester. I don't mean to sound downhearted about it. Like Leicester. To be honest, I have absolutely no idea. We were talking off air about like who's available and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think Leicester are going to have to think completely outside of the box with something like that.
I think a lot of the fans, Barry, would like someone like Graham Potter, but why would he leave what he's doing at Brighton?
Well, that's where I was coming on to. So like every team is struggling is clambering onto the Potter train and wanting him to join. But that's more like it's because he coaches. Like you evidently can see, like he doesn't spend humongous. He runs it well financially. He brings on youth. He gets gets a great song out of old players. There's just something about him that's obviously quite good. But he won't move to Leicester. He certainly won't come to Villa. He's aiming for. There's no point. His team's on our level. He's going for the next level, and he's probably maybe not sexy enough for that. He probably has to go to Europe to get something like that.
Yeah.
But I genuinely don't like for Villa. I can see us getting another manager. I can see us getting a Pochettino. I can see that happening. It's an alluring club. We've got owners who are spunking money quite easily. Have obviously got quite a good financial structure that they're trying to do and want to get into Europe. It's okay, Leicester saying they want to get into Europe, but if you're not going to spend any money, you don't have a manager that seems to be making the players better, and the players who are there look like they don't really want to play. That's a really hard club to want to go and change.
Yeah, and our fans have a real thing for money. They think the only reason people would come to us is for money. The only reason people would leave us is for money. And for me, if I was a footballer, it would be trophies, right? It would be playing at the top table in Europe consistently, particularly in the Champions League, particularly if you've got an international career. But you want to win trophies. When you're paid more money than you can spend, having 50% more isn't going to sway you, right? It might sway your agent a little bit. They might put you under a bit of pressure because they'll get their cut. But as a player or as a manager, that wouldn't worry me. And how people, they must be on drugs to think Pochettino would come to Leicester. He wants to win stuff.
Is the bookies' favourite at the minute, Steve? So I've just got the odds up at the moment. I know that means very.
That's because people are placing bets on him. That's why he's the bookies' favourite.
The next three names after that, I don't even know if I want to go into, if I'm honest. And this is probably the biggest Brendan in the propaganda that I can give.
Exactly.
So we've got Pochettino at 3-1, Sean Dyche at 5-1, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at 8-1, and Rafa Benitez at 20-1.
Yeah,
Sean
Rafa
Dyche,
Benitez. There's a lot of fans after him. You know, let's park the bus, and hopefully we can score. Benitez, let's park the bus. Just have 11 defenders on the field, and hopefully we can score from a set piece or something and nick it 1-0.
Want to park the bus with our team, bloody hell.
All I would say, Barry, in response to you saying about, Villa would be more attractive to managers than Leicester, you got to understand that we were in a similar position to this when Puel got sacked and we managed to get Brendan Rodgers from Celtic, which was seen quite at the time as quite a big appointment for us, similar to you guys getting Steven Gerrard, I guess, from Rangers.
I think they're slightly different, if I'm being honest, because I think in a compliment to Leicester, because Rodgers was quite a coup then, and he was on the up, and but he left Celtic similar to the way he's in just now. He wasn't getting any money. Celtic weren't getting any better. Celtic were on the decline, and Rangers won the league the following season. So he will jump at the chance to jump ship if he gets opportunity, and he certainly will if he's going to keep getting paid the money he's getting paid now.
He's not going to get that money again, though, is he? Let's be honest.
Well, that's the thing. So what we're talking about, the sort of how, like, I don't think Leicester necessarily are bad with money, but they've obviously played players such a wage that they would rather just sit around and take the wage than go. And he's like that. And fucking hell, there's this new fashion with managers, unfortunately, especially managers who aren't top level, are happy to get sacked because they're going to be multimillionaires when they do get sacked. And it is it's a horrible trend. And mediocre managers have become millionaires from it. They like Pardew Allardyce and like that. Like realistically, Rodgers is above them, so he deserves his retirement fund. But it is unfortunately a detriment to Leicester, because at some point the money has to stop being spent and the manager has to manage.
I guess a couple of years ago, Aidan, when we were fighting for the Champions League, we were worried about losing Brendan to an Arsenal or a side that is considered a bigger club, a top 6 club. To show how far his stock has fallen at the minute, that really you can't imagine him getting a job with that ilk anymore.
No, not at the minute. No. I think he's a bit too big a risk for a team, for a top 6 team. I mean, as you guys were saying, he's not, in the reflection of how his players are playing, he's not really brought anyone through recently or brought anyone on. You could maybe argue Maddison, but no, he's as Steve said earlier as well. There's excuses coming, and there's a lack of kind of fight and organisation in the team. I guess the tricky thing is you're asking, are the players at his disposal good enough? I watched Amartey's performance on Saturday, and he just looks out of his depth.
So why is he being picked then?
Sorry?
So
well, yeah. Why him and not Sancho? No, that's a very, very valid question. And why is it? It seems to be once we go ahead, we panic. We went ahead against Brentford, we went ahead against Southampton, and teams that we should be beating at home, and a panic sets in. Maybe a poor game management. It only seems to take these teams to make a couple of substitutions and change how they're playing, and there's no response from us to that. We can't deal with that. And it's not good enough, needs to lift. We've got talented, quality players, but we need them to be playing at their potential, especially the likes of Ndidi. We need to be getting the best out of those guys, and at the minute he's not. So no, he wouldn't. I don't think he'd be an attractive proposition for many teams in England, in the English Premier League at the moment.
Okay, well, thanks for that. We'll come off the subject of Brendan Rodgers fairly shortly, but a couple of other names that have been mentioned as well that might be, possibly ripe for us if Brendan was to go. I think there's the Porto manager. So obviously the Portuguese league is probably similar to the Scottish league in terms of stature. Conceição, I think his name is. I think the thing is, it's going to be European coach, isn't it? Unai Emery's another one that had a good chance in the Premier League before. He's done a really good job over at, is it Villarreal? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So who knows? So Roberto Mancini, of course, that used to play for us, that again could be tempted by a chance back in the Premier League. With some really good players at disposal. Let's not forget we still have a good squad. So I guess we'll watch this space over the coming weeks and months. I think from my own point of view now, and it's without agenda that I say this, I would like us to try and seek that better option out, because I can see where this is heading. And you don't have to be a fortune teller to see that. I think the football on display at the moment means that we're going to be down that rear end of the table throughout the season if nothing changes, which I think is a huge problem for us. So that's my tuppence worth on that. The dog's agreeing in the background. If it changes and we start picking up victories, then brilliant. And that's really the only thing that I'm after for the football club. Steve, I'll come on